I'd like to sort of address how we approach the couple weeks leading up to it, rather than just the course as it's at this point. You know, some people will go into it training hard, training properly, feeling ready, feeling like they need to taper and rest going into it. Some may be in the spot I'm in this year, not training much, and I don't need to taper because I'm really not training much. So,
is it called a taper if you haven't?
I can't really taper without just stopping all activity. So,
season of taper.
Yeah, it's really, technically it's been about a year and a half of tapering, but you know.
Yeah.
So,
yes.
In any case, you know, you want to make sure in that week or two leading up that if you have been doing a lot, that you're gradually tapering down. The mistake I've seen a lot of people make is they don't process that word taper, you know, they just sort of shut down for maybe a couple weeks before, and you know, particularly the week before, but you really want to gradually back it down. If you just shut it down like that, you're more likely to get sick, more likely to have problems, or by the time you get to the event, you're so lethargic you don't feel like you can even move, and you're wondering what's wrong. So you really want to bring it down more slowly. So, you know, I don't know how you guys have approached that. And
No, as far as the taper is concerned, yeah, I think a couple of weeks. And yeah, like you said, dropping the hours and the miles down gradually is good. You know, the last couple of weeks, I'm doing more of just looking at the trails, trying to get every bit of information I can on the trail reports and on the weather, what the weather's doing. Joel mentioned that we're all coming from different groups, categories and such, and I've skied it now, I think 7 times, all but one of them on classic skis, and so I'm almost neurotically keeping track of, or trying to get tabs on what the trails are like. So in addition to tapering, I'm also looking at conditions and trying to figure out what I'm going to do.
If you don't know already, BLM Facebook page does a great job of trail condition reports.
Yep.
So if you want to get really neurotic and worried and stuff like that, then you can spend time on the BLM, and they have a website that they post those same trail updates. But they're really good about talking about what the trail conditions are like.
Yeah, they'll mention how often they've groomed, or how recently they've groomed, or and exactly what trails they've groomed, and they'll mention if there's nasty overflow. They won't, you know, go into detail if there's kind of overflow in some of the typical places. But certainly if there's some nasty overflow, they'll point it out.
Pictures of snow machines in the water. That's pretty clear. Yeah, that's a good place.
you know, one of the things I'm seeing happen here at the store is people starting to pick up their food and figuring out what they're using. And you know, one thing that's important is not to just think about what you're going to use and use it that day, but be using it ahead. You should have been training on it. You should be training on it now. It's a bad idea to just sort of get along with what food you have in the house and do that, and then switch to some type of race food like goo at the last minute. You want to sort of use that all along, but especially from here out, just to make sure it's agreeing with you and you know what to expect. You know how it's going to ebb and flow with its energy supply. But you really want to train all along with that. And also from the perspective, you're training your muscles to do the activity you're doing, but you're also, in essence, training your digestive system to process the food you're putting in. And if you use that same food you're going to race on, that's a very good idea, because you're just getting used, that's part of the system, processing and getting ready and training up for it, is knowing, you know, how the body's going to react.
One of the things to keep in mind too, and this is from the perspective of the middle to the back of the pack, because you will be in the dark, in the cold.
There's dark?
Yes, there is. And then there's light again.
I may see that this year.
So something to keep in mind, something that I've found out, because I've done it 4 times and been through the middle of the night. You run into what I consider the 3 whammies. One is it gets cold. I mean, you can get down to 20 below, sometimes even colder, but down in the low spots. In the, you know, like 3 or 4 in the morning, 5 in the morning. You're calorie deficient at that point, so that your body's not generating much heat. And we also go through our natural body cycles, and typically, I think it's 4 or 5 in the morning is when your body is the coolest. So when those all hit together, you get really cold. You don't want to do a lot of things. And so one of the things, and I brought some here, is one of the things that I like to keep in mind is like, what kinds of food you don't have to worry about freezing. And so, like, here's some stuff that Gorp. Gorp does not freeze, and you don't have to worry about it. Something I learned from Kevin Breitenbach, which is really cool, is get these kind of zip bags. Because when it's really cold, you don't want to take your gloves off and be trying to pry the bag apart. But the other thing I would add is get the really good zip bags, because I got the cheap ones in the beginning, and you went, zip, it's closed. Zip, it's closed. Still closed! But, and these things, I had been using these for a while. I've got Stroop waffles, honey stinger waffles. Last year, because I was running it, I was at the very back of the pack, I found that these were not bothering my stomach. And they were great when they got cold because they were pretty easy to open, and they're thin. So even if they were frozen, they were quick to thaw in my pocket. And even if they were frozen, I could just break off a chunk and throw it in. Same with shot blocks. Now these things freeze solid, but when they're frozen, you can take one, stick it up under this cheek, take another one, stick it up under the other cheek, and just pop one right in your mouth and suck on them. And then they'll thaw out. The one thing I would recommend is don't do that on a downhill. Because I have a feeling if you inhale one of these, you're going to need the Hulk to do a Heimlich maneuver on you. But start thinking about what food you're going to want if you figure you're going to be out there when I'm out there, when it's really cold and you don't want to be digging in to get food. What's really easy to get to, and what can you just pop in your mouth and not have to worry about.
So just to add on to that, these are some of the same foods that I like to take with me, and I'll actually take them out of the wrappers. So I won't bring any of these wrappers with me at all. I'll just prepare bags like this.
Oh, okay.
And I'll have 2, 3, as many as 4 or 5 of these, and I just take them out, and then I've got a chalk bag that's on my vest or my sternum strap, and I just drop it in there. And then I just drop it in there and open, and then it's just right in front of me. So there's no wrappers on the course that I have to worry about. It's just food.
I use one of the feed bags on my bike, and I'll put that same exact mix. I put it right in that feed bag, and I don't have it in any other container then, and that's got a handy little open-close thing on the top, and so I can just reach in and go. And, you know, one of the things I think is really key, a lot of times people stop and they eat a bunch, and they stop too long. And really being set up so you can do it on the move. Anytime you stop, your body starts cooling, and then anytime you start going, you know, you start heating up and you get this wave going, and the tireder you are, the harder that gets. And so trying not to stop much, you can slow way down, but trying not to completely stop because your body tightens up, it's miserable getting going, and you just start this ugly wave. And trying to eat really consistent, often in little amounts. You know, I'm addicted, literally, to the cherry shot blocks. I have them in place of what most people have as a coffee in the morning. So when my Ironman coach a few years ago told me, well, in the run, she didn't know I had a cherry shot block addiction. She said, you know, in the run, late in the race, so, you know, I've been going forever. 1 block every 2 miles, which really equates to, you know, 1 block every 10 miles or every 10 minutes or so. But what I found was, in doing that, and whatever food you use to do this, is it kept me on a really even keel of sugar and caffeine. But late in the race, your stomach doesn't want to process a lot, and so you need to know what process is easy. And, you know, sugar process is easy, caffeine goes in easy, caffeine helps keep you alert at that time in the morning when your body just wants to sleep. But taking things at a real even rate so that you don't get this up and down sugar crash, issue going on, which, and I'd always loved the shot blocks, and I just down the package and then wait a long time until I had another. What I found when I started doing it one block in my run every 2 miles was it was super even, and I just felt like, even though I was dead tired when I might have started that run, it really kept me even. But if I'm like, I feel good and I want an extra mile, it's like, oh, I need one now, okay, I'll take one. And another half mile later, it's like, uh-oh, I'm crashing. And then I'd start the wave. You know, so you have to be really deliberate and try to figure out what nutrition's gonna keep you going really even. And that you're going to find desirable to take, you know, and eat and palatable and all of that, but not taking big breaks to eat a bunch. It's just hard on the system to get going again. You know, I don't know if you guys concur with that, but
yeah, definitely. It's a little bit harder when you're skiing because you've got your hands.
It is. It is.
But you can still, whether you're skate skiing or classic skiing, and I've classic skied it, I've still just been classic skiing without my poles while I've been eating, and I'm just sort of shuffling along on the side of the trail eating. And yeah, I'm not moving as fast.
Carabiner, like I'll hook my poles too if I do that. Like, then I can just like hook them to the bottom of my pack or something, and they're out of the way, and I can shuffle and eat and have both hands free.
So I'll keep my feet in.
Yeah, I would just say like stopping and eating is better than not eating.
oh, definitely. Definitely. You gotta eat.
If you get 30 miles in or 4 or 5 hours in and you realize that, oh, I should have eaten this whole bag of food by now and I've had 2 pieces out of it, then feel free to stop and eat if that's your problem.
And what I would encourage is slow down to quarter speed and eat would be better than stopping completely for long. I mean, you may need to stop and get it arranged and stuff, but if you can just sort of keep crawling along, it'll keep your body from shutting down.
Well, on the bike, like if you find yourself pushing, like getting up to the divide, that's, if you're pushing, you're eating. Right? Like that's a great opportunity just to like drink a bunch of water and eat to get caught up on your food intake is just to stop and eat while you're pushing.
And then there's the checkpoint menus.
And there is a lot of food there to take advantage of, which the people on the faster side tend not to use much. I don't know how much time Tyson you typically had spent in any of them.
Up to 5 minutes.
I think I stopped last year at Windy Gap for a few minutes to refill my hydration pack and remix my energy drink, and I think I took 1 cookie. Other than that, I didn't use any of them because I had it all with me and I was doing it as I went. But as you get to the people who are out there longer and breaks become a little more important to actually do take them.
I linger.
You linger and you do it. But, you know, when you're out there, you want to try to keep, when you're out on the trail, you want to really try to keep
Definitely
moving.
take a good look at this list. I mean, it's a pretty amazing what you can get out on the trail, and as long as you know it's coming, like you can really use it well. And
They do a great job.
And I usually just kind of, I don't have much. Chips and Coke is about all I get usually. And I did have some frozen meatballs a couple years ago, but.
So after the first year of the race and the first year that I did this, I went back and the race had done a great job of the results and putting up how much time you spent at a checkpoint was pretty easy to do just looking at the results. And I found that I spent, it was over 3 hours. It might have been even closer to 4 hours at checkpoints. So my strategy in the next year and following years was to try and minimize that time. There was some experienced travelers like Ned Roselle, who I saw at Windy Gap, and he never sat down. He just walked into Windy Gap, ate a bowl of soup, and then just walked out. And I remembered that after the first year, and so now I've got that down, and I'll kind of visualize probably like these triathletes do when they go into a transition or something like that, but just sort of visualize taking stuff out when I'm coming into a checkpoint and thinking about, all right, I've got to get some trash out of my pockets, I've got to get my water bottle filled up, I've got to change out this dry layer, so I can be really efficient. And I've gotten it down to roughly about 20 minutes, the whole race that I'll spend combined in all checkpoints.
And I would say too, that if you've got a checklist, deal with it right away. Because if you're like me and social, you get back out ready to go on the trail. Oh yeah, the trash in my pockets, and oh yeah, I forgot to fill my water because I'm talking. Everybody's friendly at the checkpoint.
Get ready to go.
It's hard to leave.
Yeah, get it all done first, and then if you want to talk to anybody, you can talk to anybody.
Well, yeah, and I think, you know, the point being, it's not necessarily about just trying to go fast and not spend time there, but it's, you know, the more you stop, the more your body shuts down, and it's so agonizing getting going to me when I've stopped, knowing that if I keep going, it's better, and when I've traveled with other people who stop more than I want, I just feel so miserable, you know, for the next few miles trying to get rolling again, get moving, and get the body back to a happy place.
The cabins are so warm.
Yeah.
The food is so good.
So, you know, but, you know, you sort of figured out what works for you, but
Tex, will you leave that packet there real quick? Continue.
But I'd also like to thank Joel and all the organizers from the back of the pack. There's still food left. And it's great. Lots of
This used
food.
to have a lot more detail, but we've taken some of it out because some people would say, oh, this had Doritos instead of Cheetos. And
Oh, you're kidding.
no, they would get very specific with things. So, but as a whole, snacks at checkpoint 1, 2 is always the baked potatoes, 3 is got the meatball soup, 4 is usually a ramen or PB&J. And the finish line, we're doing a grill and hot dogs and whatever. And if you notice with this list, it's missing something this year. And I'm going to go over this the pre-race meeting. Is there a trail shelter this year?
No trail shelter?
There's
No
no.
trail shelter.
Oh.
It has been removed from the website completely, hopefully.
Okay.
That is, it's almost impossible to staff. Everyone wants to do it by skiing in or biking in. No one wants the snow machine in, and you can't get the gear in, can't get the gear out. And so it has been, we took a lot of stats the last few years, and so the trail shelter's out. And the medics have decided to not do a wall tent at Caribou Bluffs like they've done the last 2 years. They're doing strictly roaming medics.
Jamie doing his tent? Is Jamie doing his tent?
As far as I'm concerned, the wall tent on Windy Gap, Ice Lakes will still be there. But the wall tent at Caribou Bluffs, the medics started that, and it turned into a mini checkpoint. And they, based on their stats, Ariana's done the medics every single year. They're no longer going to have that and just do roaming.
So just for folks that might not be as familiar with the course, the Caribou Bluff is just between Windy Gap Cabin and Borealis. So it's a
Not 70.
70, yeah.
70, mile 70, right. So it's a late point in the race.
Here.
A lot of the second half of the group gets there in the cold and the dark.
That's a cold spot, that's for sure. Cold.
Yeah.
So we've done a lot of talking. Are there any questions from the group here tonight? Comments?
What do you guys bring for extra clothes, layers? Just curious.
So definitely, you know, Eric was mentioning earlier, well, I think maybe before we started talking about, you know, just we're talking about face masks and stuff. So I mean, I always bring a neck gaiter, and I'll probably bring an extra 1 or 2 neck gaiters because that's just something that gets iced up pretty quickly. Spare hat, that sort of thing. Spare mittens, certainly. But as far as gear, maybe just 1 extra layer.
And one of the questions there is like, what's your anticipated finish time?
Right.
Because if you go through Borealis at 4 o'clock in the morning, it's going to be cold.
Right. And then also a spare pair of socks too. I'm out there. Typically, my feet will get awfully wet during the day when it gets pretty hot. And skiing, you know, blisters are always a concern. And so being able to put on clean, dry socks is just, it's pretty nice. Prevents a lot of blisters.
I've started to use a lot of vest because it's quick on, quick off. And some in the past I brought gear that's and I mean to wear, but you get up there and you're cold. It's like, oh, I need to take off outer layers to put this underneath. And I'm like, I'm not gonna do that. So I like the vest because it's just like real quick to put on and then it warms your core. And so it's a big thing I've worn. And I've also got another specialized, I love this piece of equipment. This is George Berry. For this idea, the belly band for people with a certain girth. And this is just a piece, you can get it at Apocalypse Design, they'll make them for you, George Berry. And it just warms the core. And it's easy on and off. And Kareem soda pocket in there. I put Cliff bars in there. They stay nice and chewy. And then if it gets too hot, I mean, it's pretty easy to pull that off.
Manufacture those. That is amazing. I've never seen that.
Yeah. George Berry came up with the idea and he told them. And I went in and I said, I want the George Berry bell. Oh, yeah, we know that one. We'll make it for you.
Eric, I like that because I felt like having the camelback on under the jacket. You always get this kind of cold band right above the shoulder.
Right, yeah.
I hadn't thought of that. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, no, it's great. I love that thing. So things that you can, and I always try to think about that time. 3 in the morning, you're running low on calories, your body's cold. What is, and you want more layers. What is it that's real quick and easy? Like Buffs. You know, they can shove them in a pocket, you pull another one. I think last year, I had 3 Buffs and my hat. Oh, I just kept adding layers because it was getting colder. I didn't want to stop and dig into my pack for something else. I just kept whatever I had. So that's what I would think is whatever is quick and easy to put on.
It's not a bad idea to have some hand warmers. You can put them on your toes or your hands if you're in the middle of the night and you get cold. That makes a huge difference, especially for skiers.
Depending on the overflow situation, you know, you could think about anticipating getting wet feet. So like neoprene socks are nice to have.
Feet at some level.
Yeah, I mean, so, because if you get wet boots, and even if you have extra socks, but you put like another set of wool socks on, you put your wet boots on, you don't really get anywhere. But so like pack a set of neoprene socks, which you can get everywhere. And then it doesn't matter if your boots are wet. You know, the neoprene will still keep you warm.
If you're really serious, these right here are called Wiggy's waders. And from Wiggy's, they're very lightweight waders, and that's what the waders are like. And then since I have shoes with studs on them, I didn't want to put holes in my waders, so I created these to go inside.
So I've got a same pair of waders like that, but before I move on, I want to remember to say something. I've tried out the neoprene socks, and I'm sure they work for a lot of people, but for me, I just got too frustrated with them because late into a long run or long ski, for me, my feet got cold because they don't breathe.
Right.
So I've gone with just smart wool socks and then just bringing extra smart wool socks and putting them on. So, but I've heard from other people and they swear by them.
Yeah, my experience is
Just try them out before I'm on ride or something.
Yeah, and one thing with those too is it's real easy to get those where they're too tight, and that's going to make you cold. So like go way big with anything neoprene like that or sealskin sock, because if they end up being tight, that's not going to be good. So I mean, you don't want them flopping all over, but they can't be constricting. If there's compression, like that's not probably going to be a good thing.
Yeah, the first year that I did it, there was a report at the race meeting of like, just been 3 years ago with like really awful overflow, like snow machines getting stuck in overflow. And I had not planned on that. So I like raided and I got 2 big trash bags and a roll of duct tape. And I figured if I really get just one over each leg,
Compact
tape it
bags.
off, yeah, and just walk right through it and then take it all off when you're done.
However, you got to be careful, because when I did it on kicksled 2 years ago, I put these on, went through the overflow, took it all off, around the corner, oh, more overflow. I did it 4 times. Obviously, that wasn't thinking. It was like, I should have left these things on. So think about that. Because, I mean, I've been through there where there's been absolutely no overflow. And then I've been through there where, yeah, I could have put these things on 4 times. And, I mean, there was one part where something was flowing over knee deep.
Yeah.
So it was definitely serious water.
And it depends, you know, what you're up against after that. I mean, I've been where coming out of Windy Gap, I got wet feet post-holing through the side trail. Unfortunately, got passed by somebody who knew enough to ride on the river right past me, and I didn't see. But I was post-hole, my feet ended up wet, but it was mid-20s or something that day, and it was fairly warm, and I found I just kept moving, and that water actually warmed up in the boots, and I was okay, and I just finished the race that way. Now I finished in like 10 and a half hours, so I wasn't out there when that temperature was plummeting. So, that goes to how long are you going to be out there and what is the temperature that day and how hard are you able to go. For those that are out there the shorter time, not only are they out there in a shorter time, but they're able to create more body heat because they're going at a different pace.
Go pretty hard.
They're able to go pretty hard. If your heart rate is 20 beats higher, because you're going to be out there half the time, you're going to stay a little warmer. So, you really have to sort of plan for what your experience is. And it's not a bad idea to go out there and practice when you're close to home. Find some overflow to stick your feet in. See what happens.
Yeah.
See how the skis ice up, what the bindings do. See how you deal with the cold where you can get to safety soon enough. But, I've accidentally done that when I wasn't so far away, which turned into a good experience because I knew what was happening. But it's not a bad idea to sort of put yourself in that situation when it's safe and you're close by dump water in your shoe, whatever, just figure it out, know what's going to happen, know what your body's going to react. And
So it was the first or second year of the Whites, I can't remember which, but I just skied through the ice lakes, and they were super icy, full of overflow, full of slush, and got to the other end of them, and it was just sort of like beeline it, double pole, and just go straight to the other side. And I could see, I was pretty much skiing through a stream, and got to the other side, and it was cold. It was below 0 at that point, and I couldn't get my bindings, my skis out of the bindings, my boots out. But my feet were wet. So what I did was skied a ways just to get my heart rate up, and then while I was balancing, I just took my foot out of the boot with it still in the binding, put on a dry sock, and then put in a foot warmer while I was balancing like this, and then quickly put it back in, and then I skied another 10 minutes down the trail, and I did the same thing on the other side. And then when I got to Windy Gap, they said, "Hey, come on inside." I'm like, I'm gonna need some help here, and they came out with a cup of water and hot water, threw it on the bindings, got out of the bindings, brought them into Windy Gap and drive them out. So even though it is a race rule that you can't bring gear in, that rule has been stretched in the past if your bindings are so iced up that you're gonna have a hard time getting back into them. So,
If the water's deep enough, you can freeze up your rear derailleur pretty easily on the bike, and there can be some pretty good problems there. Pedals, whether or not you're clipped in and your pedal ices up, and that can all be a pain in the butt to deal with.
Yeah, I've been on those ice lakes when, there was a little slush on top, but it was smooth and good traction and just felt like you could fly through. But, if you're spraying slush ice all over all your equipment, it may not be worth trying to make that extra time there, The year I had that, it wasn't during the race, but we rode pretty slow through there just to not spray water on the wall. Yeah, there's one up there, and you can sort of see it's blue on the background, and that was just, it snowed 3 inches the night before, and it just sucked up all that moisture, so it was super thin, but it was, light snow that had sucked up the moisture, and you could sail through it. It was great traction. It was hardly resistance. It was so thin, but it would have just been all over everything. So back at that pace down and respecting those elements you're dealing with, and not creating problems for later by having ice.
The ice lake section, in case you don't know, is pretty much after you go over the divide and pass. It's kind of this, it could be a couple miles, or it could all just be soft snow, but it's a little different every year, it seems like.
Basically, lots of overflow.
That's because the name is a bad name. It's a spring. It's not actually a lake.
Yeah, it grows though.
It tends to grow. Some years there's nothing, some years there's a bunch.
But like when Joel was talking about post rolling a 2 years ago, that was all like right after Windy Gap. I think I've seen, I don't know, sometimes there can be some pretty good ice right before the wall here, almost on the way back. You still got trail shelter there.
right before the trail shelter where there's not a checkpoint, there is some really good overflow. And what makes that tricky is that it doesn't sneak up on you. You can see it. It's a big amount of overflow. These guys, or people who've been out there, I know what I'm talking about, but it's just slow. And so it can just take a skier or a rider or somebody on foot or a snow machine and just push you right into this soft snow at the bottom of it, which is just full of water. So that's something to look out for. And it's not just there too, in other locations.
I feel like there's a
as well.
bunch of spots, all these little creeks coming down after Windy Gap, like on the flatter part of the trail there, you get a little turn right where that creek is draining and it's usually icy.
In case you don't know too, with overflow on trails, if you're trying to go around it, generally you always want to go down low. Sometimes people try to go high, but it can dam and can create a little lake behind that's covered, that's underneath the snow. So if you decide, I don't want to deal with the overflow, I want to go around it, then, go toward the bottom part. It may look a little bit worse, but if you're going to punch through snow above it, it could be a dam that's holding water.
Could be waist deep.
It can be very deep. I've slipped off the top edge and gone up to here. That was my nearby experience with getting my feet wet in a good situation because I wasn't far away. But yeah, I was trying to walk that top edge and I slipped off and I was instantly all the way down.
Yeah.
So what do you guys...
That's a good photo. It shows all the food that's at
Kind of laid out.
cache.
Oh, the baked potatoes are great.
Quick question, sorry, back to the clothes. Do you think it's worth it for most people to have like a pair of puffy pants with them? Just in case they're out there longer, or say they do get wetter than expected?
I think that's something that you've got to decide for yourself. I've always had a puffy parka layer, but I've had an extra pair of over boots because I know my feet can get pretty cold, but I've not had puffy pants. But I wouldn't tell somebody not to do that. Because I think
Especially if you anticipate being out there real late night, early morning hours when it is that cold. And I mean, you can really play head games with you too. We didn't really talk about that, but when it's the middle of the night like that, I've done a canoe race where we went 24 hours straight, and people out there were hallucinating. They were, they weren't dealing with cold, but trying to keep moving at a time when your body's normally shut down and sleeping can really play with your mind. And my canoe partner in that race swore there was a campfire on the bank in front of us. And there was no campfire. Somebody else said the guy in front of his boat had horns and looked like the devil up there in the middle of the night, keeping him going. So, you have to be aware that the mind can play games. And if you really think you may have any trouble in the middle of the night, having plenty of warm clothes is a good idea.
I do have one suggestion to what Wes said, and that's if you're concerned about puffy pants, but you don't have any and you would only be getting them for the race, something you can do is if you have a lightweight pair of rain pants, that can make a huge difference.
Yeah.
And if you have it for during the summer, that's what, when Corinne and I skied it, I was getting cold, I threw on a pair of my rain pants, and I didn't have any more problems for the rest
That's
of the
what I was
whole
gonna say,
time.
the 2 times I did it, and I got the Borealis at 6 in the morning, so I'm past the trail where they had the tent at like 4 in the morning, it's 30 below. And just putting on those rain pants over my tights and my long johns, that was enough to be fine. I did carry a puffy jacket just in case on top.
Yeah, I would just, if you're on a bike, and it's different if you're running and you have to carry it, but it's so easy to carry that stuff on a bike, that if you're thinking your finish time is after nightfall, so 13 hours plus, just bring it. It's so easy on a bike to carry an extra bottom layer, an extra top layer, just do it. If you're running or if you're skiing, you gotta make some decisions there because it's a lot more challenging to carry all that gear, but you can carry so much on a bike that, and if you're not racing for a top 5 finish anyway, just carry the extra stuff, who cares?
Biking tends to be cold. I think biking tends to be colder on the downhills than anything else too. I mean, 1, you can go faster, but 2, you just literally sit there doing nothing. So having a little extra clothes on that can be, skiing, you're still sort of bouncing along, supporting yourself on the bumps and everything, and you're using a little bit of something to some degree. But on the bike, you literally just sit on your seat and coast when you're dead tired down the hills. And
if you haven't done really long downhills as part of your training, keep that in mind, because going down Cache Mountain Divide, you need to bundle up, unless you're running, and even when you're running to a certain degree, but bundle up before you start going down, because you will get so cold if it's cold going down, whether you're skiing or biking, you're just sitting there, and pretty soon you're so cold, and you're like, oh, I gotta get off and get something warm on, but my fingers aren't working.
And think about if there is an inversion
and you're going down.
And you're going downhill, it changes in a hurry if you're dropping 30 degrees as you're descending. So, you know.
Yeah, I remember when Karina and I first did it, we skied, and I didn't layer up before, and by the time we got to the bottom, my fingers were so cold, and I'm sitting there trying to pull stuff out of my pack and put it on, and I was like, should have put it on top.
Yeah. And if you anticipate being out there in the middle of the night, it's a good idea to practice that. So, you know, it doesn't mean you need to ride all day. It just needs to mean, okay, when you're ready to go to bed, go put on your equipment and go do it for a couple hours. When your body is trying to shut down, learning what it is to keep going is a valuable experience before you do it when you're ready to tired. You know, knowing how that's going to go is
And if you
a skill.
haven't loaded up all your gear that you're going to take on the race and gone out for a ride, do that a couple of times. That's what I did I finally started learning. I have a whole list in front of my gear. I actually have a list that's laid out where everything goes in what compartment, so I don't have to think about it. And I load it all up, and then if I was going out for an hour ski, I'd go out and come back and then unload it so that it became kind of second nature.
The bike or the skis, whatever it is, your handling characteristics change a lot when you're loaded. So, you know, being used to that is important.
Yeah, tough.
So for like skiers and bikers, you know, we have our way, but like, could you explain like how you guys pack your gear in order to get to it? Like, you know, how you layer it or whatever. Do you guys have a system, Drew, for skiing? Like, what goes on bottom, what's on top? And
So one thing I started doing was skiing with a Apocalypse Design fanny pack that I swing around in front of me. So not a very big one, but one that I can just unzip. And that's got my scraper, my probably two, maybe as many as 3 sticks of kick wax, and then a cork there. So that's really accessible, so I can do that. I don't want to be slipping and thinking, man, I don't want to like dig in the bottom of my pack for that. So that's pretty accessible. And then, you know, I have in the past put snacks there, but now I've been using just a chalk bag. So the snacks are up here. I kind of explained that earlier. Then in back, I've got a real simple, my day pack is pretty simple, just with a pull cord. And that's where I put the layers, but then I've got the lid as well. Mm-hmm. So in the layers, the big parka goes at the bottom, and then, not big, but relatively big, you know, that goes in the bottom. And then the neck gaiter, spare mittens and stuff, that goes towards the top. And then in the lid is actually where I'll put the extra foot warmers, headlamp, spare battery, things like that. So yeah, I know it's similar to these guys, I'm sure. Like
Is your chalk bag pink?
Yes, it is.
so what do you?
Similar setup. Thanks. Yeah.
So Tyson and Joel, how do you guys pack your guys' bags?
Little as I think.
Right.
Yeah, you know,
duration question.
Again, it depends on how long you're out there. For me, one of the things I'm going to try to avoid this year is having the seat bag on the back or keeping it as small as possible. Because I found a couple of years ago when up in the pass area, it was really punchy and I kept going over the handlebars. I don't know how many times, way too many times, so I went over the bars. It was a great soft landing. But when I had to get back on, swinging my leg over the bag that was sticking up this much higher that wasn't, you know, then I started stepping through the frame and, you know, I mean, it's easier if I don't have that there, if it's kept low. So I'm going to go with a down tube bag this year and try to get between that and the frame bag and a couple of feed bags, try to get everything there. But that said, I don't pack as much as some because I anticipate being in, well, this year not too long after dark, hopefully, normally before it gets dark. So the temperature's starting to drop when I come in, but it isn't plummeting yet. So it sort of depends on how much you need to carry there.
Can I add something to that,
Yep.
Joe? So if you're a small rider like me, you have a larger frame bag. So it's kind of avoidable for me to have a back bag.
Yep.
So that is one other thing to consider, is how much space you actually have in your bag. I know Joel, they'll pull stuff out of their frame bag. I'm like, what the heck? Like, there's no way I could even fit that in my frame bag.
So, and on that, my second year racing, I had a small frame bag. I was on a snowcats and mountain bike, and so I opted not to bring a jacket. Bring a jacket.
Oh no! So Joel was right. Like,
Have the bags.
Yeah, Joel had prepared me and told me it's a pain when you fall off and have to get, and I'm a real slow racer, so I'm like, oh my God, he's right. But because my frame bag is so small,
You
I
need
can't
what you
afford
need.
it. Yeah.
But like I said, I'm gonna try to replace that with going to the down tube bag, so I'm just shifting my loads in my case of where I can carry, but I want to still have the stuff I have. But for me, I keep a bottle in the frame bag that I have a real thick, high energy mix drink in there. I use a Perpetuum, and I'll do like a 3 or 4 hour bottle, meaning I've mixed it 3 or 4 times stronger than you would if you're going to drink that bottle in an hour. And then I use a hydration pack for most of my water, and so I'll sip that to get my energy. But that's right where I can get it. I can zip and unzip and get to that. And then I will have extra gloves in there, and my shell will usually either be there or it'll probably be in the down tube bag this year. But I don't change a whole lot when I'm out there, so I'll have probably an extra pair of gloves. Most of the time it's warm enough that I don't need gloves with the warm coats. So, you know, it sort of depends what your needs are, but, you know, think about getting on and off the bike and how functional those bags are where they are.
Hey Joel, how do you, with the hydration pack, I always envision this thing freezing up. How do you keep
I
that
hardly
thing?
ever, I mean, occasionally.
It's right on your arm.
There's a couple of tricks, right?
Yep.
So it runs underneath and blow back through the hose.
Every time you drink it.
Right, so
Most
there's
of
no
the
water.
time it has any freezing problems is all in the valve.
Yeah.
And a lot of those valves, like I've actually been able to pop off while I'm riding, just shove the whole thing in my mouth and
Thought.
pop it out and then keep sucking and shove it back on it.
But it's critical
Tuck it
to
in here.
have.
You tuck it into your belly belt.
Tuck it in there.
I mean, that's one that you can.
Oh, it's fine.
Yeah, and you know, as long as it's coming out on the side so that it's coming out here and coming up this way, anytime you put them over your shoulder traditionally, when you do blow it back, any moisture in that tube that's in this part of the hose runs down into the mouthpiece and freezes. But when it's coming up this way and size it specifically, cut the tube to the length you need to use it, but when you put it down, it's still somewhat vertical so that water drains down. When it's blown back and it drains down to here, it doesn't freeze. So I rarely have trouble with ice in it. But that said, I put my base layer on, and then this is the next thing I put on.
Right.
Which meant at Windy Gap it was a real pain to refill my hydration pack. But I'll put multiple layers over this. And I had to buy some different mid layers because my mid layers are going over my hydration pack. But that keeps it all so toasty that, you know, I just don't have a problem. And if it does freeze where I leave it, I can stick it inside a couple more layers or another layer, and it's fine.
And he's mentioned it a few times, so a lot of people that wear camel packs don't fill them up at the first checkpoint or even the second checkpoint. They wait until the third, which is mile 60. So if you have a 60-ounce bladder in there and you take a 1-shot glass sip every single mile, you'll go through your bladder, and by the time you get to Windy Gap, which is about 60.
Put 100 ounces in there.
If you're 100 ounces, you get a little more. But by doing that, you're getting that, he's talked about a constant supply of nutrition. You get that constant little sip of water, and by continually doing it every 5 minutes or whatever, you get that, it doesn't freeze up as much.
Yeah, that definitely helps too.
If the tube's coming under, one thing you'll find is you'll get to the checkpoint, you'll pull it off like you normally do, and then suddenly you've got tubes and straps all over the place, but you're in the checkpoint, so it's
Well, and my timing was deliberate in that I didn't want to fill it up before I climbed up over the pass. I wanted to have it on the emptier side when I was doing the big climb. You know, it was like if I could make it that far with what I filled with from the beginning, I didn't want to fill it before that and then have it good for the rest of the race because I'd have to carry it over the pass.
So I've never used a Camelback. I just use a water bottle, put it in my backpack, and then when I get thirsty, take it out and drink.
And when skiing, I actually carry.
Is that what you do?
So there's I couldn't stand a hose coming around like this if I'm trying to move in this motion in classic skiing. With a hose coming around here like this, that's just not going to work for skiers.
It depends a little bit on what your technique is and what your motion is.
It works if it's underneath enough layers.
So some people get it for it.
Well,
I've tried it and never.
technique-wise, it's going to depend on how you ski too. If you tend to be a little more elbow out versus in real close, it's going to make a difference too.
When we did
There are people who are sort of,
You look like this after 100 miles. I want to beat that person.
well, they're going to be sagging some, but
I actually carried a liter bottle when we skied it, just right there off my chest strap. And with skiing, you can't do it running. But with skiing, I was able to just carry it right there. It's
And,
fine.
and you don't want to run out because you need to stay hydrated. If you get behind early, you're in trouble. I planned in what I needed last year. I practiced a lot and knew sort of what I was going through, and I got really lucky. I ran out about a half mile from Windy Gap, and I ran out after the top of the wall. So I was really close to where my refill was, but I got really lucky that that's where I was that close. But you want to make sure you don't run out.
So then what are you doing with the concentrate in your bottle? How are you consuming that?
I was just sort of taking every time I drink water, I take a little sip of that. I've just so paid attention to it for so long. I guess I naturally come by it. But a lot of people, at least some people I know, will set alarms. I don't know if Tyson does that in the winter. He's done it in his Ironman races where he set alarms reminding him to eat or drink on a watch just to beep at you and go, okay, you need to take some. But for me, it works really well to have it in a liquid form. And that perpetuum you can mix really strong and it tastes okay and it's very palatable. Where other things aren't when you mix them strong, so you got to play with that. But for me, that was an easy way to get most of my calories. Eating was more just comfort food.
I also found if you're a runner or skier and you're going to use a water bottle, it's good to have it in a neoprene sleeve to keep it insulated. And I kind of did it, I put my fanny pack in the front, but I put my water bottle in there because if I leave my water bottle in my pack, I won't stop and drink. But if it's in here, it's really easy to stop and take a quick drink. And then I was able to just fill it at each checkpoint with like boiling water. By the time I got to the next checkpoint, it wouldn't be frozen yet.
Yeah, the other thing is if you're worried about, you can turn your bottle upside down so the water cools at the nozzle part so the nozzle doesn't freeze as fast.
And check that before you do that.
That it's closed.
You check, you make sure it's closed, then you put it away.
Hey, Joel, can you address really quick, like emergency-wise, like for the bike, like chain link, that kind of stuff?
Yeah,
And maybe ski, because I don't know if Drew would carry extra stuff.
Yeah, I mean, you do need some extra bits and pieces. On a bike, typically it's master links, because we see more broken chains on fat bikes than probably anything else. The other thing it's not a bad idea to have along is a replacement hanger that goes between the derailleur and the frame. That's a very fragile part on most bikes, and it's that way by design. So if you hook the derailleur on something, you don't bust the frame or the derailleur, you just break this little cheaper part. But it also makes for a fragile spot, so a lot of people carry that in a tube. And a lot of times valve cores, especially if you're tubeless, carrying an extra valve core. And I would even say carrying that if you're running tubes, and I always carry a spare tube, so you've got one in there. But with expansion and contraction in the cold weather, once in a while we see somebody take a valve cap off and the core comes out. For that reason, I don't use valve caps on mine. I never run valve caps. And, the exposed core I feel better about. It doesn't come off, and I've also seen a lot of people that use pumps that thread on when they thread it off that the valve core comes out.
Yeah.
So if you are using that type, pay really close attention that you're not losing the valve core, and if it does come out and you can find it quick, if you get your finger over the valve, you can shove it back in there and spin it in, just with your fingers to stop most of the airflow pretty quickly. But we have seen problems with valve cores, with them getting bent, different things. Practicing pumping technique so that, if you're pumping, that you don't just, you're pumping with one hand and you're holding the end of the pump at the valve with the other, but wrapping your fingers around a couple of spokes in a good way so that when you're pressing it, you have something to stabilize your hand against so you're not torquing on the valve.
It's really fun at 20 below.
It's even more fun trying to change a tube on a tubeless, put a tube in a tubeless system with tubeless sealant all over your hands at 20 below. Those are probably the main parts. I mean, that's really all we see go wrong.
You might want to change the tool.
Yeah, there's always that guy behind you. You just knock him off his bike and take his parts, as long as you have the tools, so he does. Or some people just borrow lots of parts, right, Forrest?
I didn't have to borrow it.
Oh, you didn't have to, no, you just had lots of flats, I think.
No, well, I broke my chain twice last
Oh, yeah,
year.
that was your chain.
But I had 3 links, so I even had an extra one.
So,
So I have something to add. The first year I think I did the whites, I came across 2 people that had issues with their bikes and they had cheap multi-tools, and they didn't have the tools on their multi-tool to fix the problem. So make sure your multi-tools can do everything on your bike, but also if it does, make sure it fits in every nook and cranny, because I had an experience where my 5 wasn't long enough to adjust something on a derailleur, and I kept on ghost shifting, and just because the 5 wasn't long enough. So
And chain tools not actually work with chain.
right, so make sure it works before you need it to work.
Yeah.
After you've around the house, gone through the overflow, like Joel suggests, then go and break your bike and work on it.
Yeah, exactly. See what it's like to change a tube at 20 below. But learning how to do the gear maintenance you need to do, and realize you might have to do it when it's cold. Is practicing in the house is one thing, but knowing what you got to do, realize I got to fix this. First thing you do isn't fix that, but put your puffy coat on or whatever you got with you to stay warm, because first preserve the heat.
Yeah.
So pay attention to those things. Yeah.
So most people, if you're running tubeless, do you generally carry a spare tube just in case?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. I haven't had any problems with my tubeless.
Oh, I haven't either, but I've given my tube to people.
One thing I was going to say with the tubeless is have it checked. Make sure you've got enough sealant. If you've been riding a bunch and low pressure and leaking a little bit, you don't want to go out there fairly low on sealant. And that goes for everything else. Everybody should just check out their bike. If there's any little problems, address it this week. Don't wait till the day before the race.
Make sure the fix is actually the fix.
And there's a lot of little things we can catch now that could be really nasty if you let it go.
And a lot of people don't realize, but sealant does age, and it should be replaced every 6 months. And it does stop working right. So you do need to pay attention.
What do you guys think of if you have tubeless? Bringing one of those little tubes of sealant and trying that first.
No.
Well, at first, because if you think you're gonna have to add the sealant, it means you've broken the bead on your tire somewhere. Because sometimes so if you have a flat, the bead will break, and you can just see sealant pouring out of where the bead is on your tire. Well, no matter how much sealant you have, you're not gonna fix that problem with a hand pump. You're not setting that tire back up with a hand pump. It's not happening.
Yeah, you pretty much need a compressor to seat it. So
You want to bring some CO2 and try
a little. Yeah. No, you need to have the tube along.
So on the same note, but with skis, I've tried myself, and you can try it out, but like these guys have said before the race, I've used a graphite lubricant spray that's sold at most stores just for lock maintenance. And I've used that in my bindings, my ski bindings, and it's worked wonderfully to actually keep them working.
Lock de-icer.
Yeah, it's actually graphite.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's actually the lubricant. Yeah, there is the de-icer as well.
Different than the de-icer. Oh, okay.
Yep. But the de-icer I haven't tried before, but I've heard that works. And then the other thing just to check too for skiers is overboots. Even in warm years, I've always started the whites just with overboots, and not the big burly apocalypse overboots, but some like the overboots that are over on the shelf over there. So check the overboots to make sure that they're working well. Yep. Yeah. Easily it's been old. Yep.
Yeah, I mean, the start could be 0, and it could be 30 above if you're going through the divide in the middle of the day, and you come through Borealis at midnight, and it's 20 below 0.
Questions?
Yeah, is everyone ready? Signed up?
Of course.
Of course.
I love that question. Are you ready? I always get asked that. You're ready? You're ready? Even right before the race. It's like, well, what am I going to do about it now? No, I'm not ready.
The first year Creed and I did this, I got sick for 3 out of the 4 weeks before the race. And I was on the verge of dropping out, and I started to get better, and I decided to give it a try. It's amazing what the human body can do. Just keep putting one foot in front of the other, pedaling, whatever. You do it. It might not be pretty.
Drew, do you do anything? I mean, when you hit the overflow, you just always keep the skis on, correct?
Yeah.
You ever walk?
Geez, no, because typically that ski that I have is just acting like a big snowshoe.
Right.
And so typically overflow, even though it's gonna have that layer of like ice and slush, I mean, usually I can tell by poking it with my pole, and sometimes my pole will go all the way through, like down to my hand, like this. So I know it's pretty deep, but I'm still on the surface. Or at least I'm still just 3-4 inches.
Right.
Which is ankle high.
So on the fat bike, you know, you get the angled overflow and you often will step off. It's a really good idea to have some sort of studs, some traction device on your shoes or boots, because you get off on that and you're better off on your studded tires than you are in your boots sometimes, because you can't walk across that stuff. So making sure that you are able to deal with that.
So what I have done is, I don't have poles near me to demonstrate, but I have taken my poles out of the straps because it's dangerous to fall with your hands in your straps, because you can actually land on them and injure your thumb. I've seen that happen before, not to me, but and I turn around so that the spikes are pointed in the other direction, and I can actually, going down the ice lakes, get more control doing that with my poles just turned around backwards in my hands. I can get more control actually just going down the ice lakes like that, because on skis, little skinny skis, you can get going pretty fast going down the ice lakes, and you don't have any control at all. I mean, if it's hard ice, if it's slush, it's actually a little bit nicer because you've got some control in where you're going. But other than that, some years it's just kind of a free ride. And you just ride it out. And I mean, the only way to stop, I guess, would be to just sort of sit down and try and spread out or something. But really, you're just bombing down there, and you can control yourself. Turn your poles, take your poles out of your straps, turn them around backwards. So that's worth a try on ice.
Or you could walk.
Well, is there a concern if
I think walking might
if
be
you
worse.
walk, that you're gonna pack everything full of ice and you're not gonna be able to get back into your binding?
Oh, well, when we walked, it was just ice. It was hardly any water at all.
Right.
And second, we had compactor bags and yak tracks. And we walked through it.
My problem has always been getting out of my bindings. That's happened a number of times in flights where I've had to just walk up the stairs of the cabin, and I just walk right into the cabin. And then my over boots, my bigger Apocalypse over boots, which I may have on if I've gone through overflow, like they'll just stand straight up in the middle of the cabin, and then they'll kind of eventually thaw out. But yeah, I've just walked into cabins in the whites with my skis on a number of times.
That's another good plug for a good multi-tool is I don't know how many times coming off the ice lakes you get like 2 inches of ice coating the bottom of your, biking shoe and you can't clip in, so you pull out the multi-tool and whack away.
The ice chipping tool on the multi-tool, right?
Don't tell Joel it's his tool.
What other questions do we have?
If your bike breaks down to a hopeless situation, how do you get out?
Coast the hills. Push it.
You can always walk.
I mean, yeah, so I guess the question is, if you're ready to abandon the race, or if you're gonna try and...
Yeah, I'm saying, if you've got to an abandonment point, how do you get out? Is there any emergency?
That should be
roaming medics, and if the race is going by, you can notify
If someone
the checkpoint.
has a catastrophic problem and they're going to abandon and they're in the middle of nowhere, what do they do?
Middle of nowhere, this is like White Mountains in the backyard, right? So, to mile 17, the first 17 miles, so they're abandoning for different purposes. Are they abandoning because they don't want to go on, or are they abandoning for...
Their equipment's broken.
Their equipment's broken. Well, let's say they are skiing in and they don't want to be evacuated out. Before mile 17, they can evacuate themselves. They can walk back to the trailhead. After the first checkpoint and on, there's no one behind that person. And so we have sweepers who do an evacuation, and
You will remain at the nearest checkpoint until that checkpoint closes, and then you will be evacuated.
That's right. It's not like, hey, I'm going to be taken out at this moment. It's usually hanging out at the checkpoint. You might be solicited to be another little volunteer, but yeah, you hang out until the medic team or the sweeper or the checkpoints are leaving.
Unless it's a full-on medical emergency.
Exactly. Full-on medical emergency, we have a medical crew consisting of 4 to 6 people or 5 to 6 people on snow machines that are there to evacuate people in the case of an emergency. They're all nurses and doctors.
There's an evacuation fee too, right?
There is, that's right. There is an evacuation fee to help pay for the gas and everything associated with having those snow machines and that crew out there.
And if you are scared, say you're between mile 40 and 60, you know, it's sort of the most remote part, you're over the divide. If you're not moving for a period of hours, a sweeper will come look for you. So if for some reason you think nobody's gonna know that I'm stuck out here, we're paying attention.
Everyone has a tracker.
Right, you can email people as they go by you, like tell the people
Or
at
if
the next
somebody's
checkpoint.
coming obviously past you, but say you're a red lantern, you're not.
Yeah, I was gonna say,
Solely by yourself.
sometimes people aren't going by you.
Yeah, so the last person, the red lantern, will see the sweeper. I mean, he might say, hey, you're moving 3 miles an hour and I'm sitting here on a snow machine freezing to death. I'm gonna hop 5 miles ahead to the checkpoint, have my baked potato, and I'll be checking on you. They're not leaving you out there. They keep close tabs. We have the spots, we watch them, and that sweeper is on the medic team with experience. So, yeah, whoever asked that question.
And I guess some of the best advice that I got, and this kind of became a reality, I was about a half hour maybe away from him, is practice riding by yourself if you think you're going to be by yourself. And that's probably been the best advice. I wasn't completely by myself for that whole race, but there was a huge section where I was completely by myself even at night. And the first time I did it was off the White Mountains. It was actually right here. I could hear the cars. I could see the railroad tracks, but a big fog had developed, and I started having a mental breakdown just right here. Like I knew I was only 2 miles away, but because it was late at night, I was tired, and it was dark, and fog was it. So that really practicing riding by yourself if you think you're even going to remotely be by yourself.
And that's a great point. I don't know about the skiers, but I think they're a little bit more bunched together, less spread out as a whole. But I've raced 5 times, and I've never ridden with another person past mile 40. The last 60 miles, I've always been 100% by myself. But I think the skiers are a little bit more grouped.
Sometimes, maybe not. I know it's actually a fun.
I was chasing him, so.
It's a fun game for all the people that finish early before the sun goes down. They don't get to play it, but it's a fun game actually leaving after Borealis, because what you get to start to do is you look back and you can see a train of lights. 5, 10, sometimes 15 lights. And you're like, that's the motivation I need to keep going. But what you learn, and this is pure White Mountain stuff, you turn off your headlamp when you look back. Or at least you don't let them see them. You can see the people ahead of you. You can try to see them, but you can see them a heck of a lot better if they're turning around.
And they're scared, they're afraid.
And this is probably like 10 to 15 miles, 10, 12 miles ahead of you.
If they can see you looking back, they know you're worried about them. They catch you.
Yeah. And that headlamp is just getting closer and closer and closer. And so on the years when it's been when there's been good moonlight, it's been clear, I've just turned off my headlamp entirely. I haven't used it. Just skied.
So that's what it's like when you're skiing in the dark after Borealis, not the next day.
Yeah, actually, I followed Drew's tracks for most of it, and then at one point I passed him, and I looked at it, oh my God, there's no tracks! Like, I started having a freak out moment. Following his tracks.
One year out of Borealis, I was following a couple of fat bikers, and if there was snow falling, and they were traveling in a very packed line, and so it was great because I could actually kind of fit my classic skis in there, and I was skiing along, and all of a sudden one in particular started going like this, and I was like, damn it, this isn't working. And then there was just a big pile of ramen puke on the side. And then all of a sudden the track went back to being straight. This is much better.
Hopefully they
There's listen very closely. They felt heavily. Yeah.
It didn't freeze on your skis, did it?
No.
All kind of overflow.
Yeah. That was actually Rocky.
Oh, yeah?
For those of you that
And don't forget, unless you're like Tyson or one of the very top people, there'll be some time out there where you're going, why in the heck am I doing this? I never
It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter.
But it gets better. Even you guys, even Tyson says that, it'll get better, keep going.
Yeah.
Usually for me.
It's just he says it once and it's really under his breath.
Well, you're talking about lights in general. I believe the lady rode out with you, Drew.
What's that?
I believe the lady that rode out with you.
Yeah, Tracy Curry?
Tracy.
Yeah.
She came up behind me laughing on the River Ridge, and she had this thing that looked like a DC-6 landing light. You know what that was?
No, I don't. No, it's blinding.
She told us the brand, but I can't remember what it is now.
It's like...
I said it was European.
I thought a helicopter was coming.
Yeah, I know. I've seen over the years some exceptionally bright headlamps. I think that one has like a waist belt too. It's a larger battery.
We're fortunate now that there's like a really large selection of high quality LED headlamps and lights that didn't exist 5 years ago. Like there's a whole new market for high-end LEDs. So you can get 3,500 lumen LEDs that are powered off lithium-ion lights that are just like this big.
So what I've found is the brighter the light, and this is just, you know, how my eyes have worked and stuff. The brighter the light, the more my eyes will adjust to that bright light, and the more I get this tunnel vision where that's all I can see. So I actually try and use as little of like light, like I try and put it on a lower setting. I think I've got 4 settings on my Princeton Tech. And so, yeah, I try and use the least amount of light because then that allows my night vision to develop, and then I can see right in front of me with the headlamp, but I can also see around me. I've had races like in the whites where I've just gotten tunnel vision, and it's been like kind of a mind game because that's all I can see.
Yeah, and I think the reality is in Fairbanks in the winter with snow everywhere, you get so much reflection that sometimes you don't need like 500 or 600 lumens is plenty most of the time. The only thing that I would say, on a bike, skiing might be different, but on a bike, if you're descending on a trail at 30 miles an hour, you want 1,500 lumens.
Yeah.
For a corner.
If there's stuff, you know, head high, you need good lights.
The other advantage of 3,500 lumens is like when Drew is saying, if you turn to look back at someone, you can blind your opponent.
I just know from like descending on a bike in the winter with trees coming in and you're 25, 30 miles an hour.
Why would you need lights? What's the...
Why do you need
might hit a tree?
Look at the picture.
Oh my blood.
Good picture.
No, good lights, and if you think, you should bring a light no matter what, even if you think you're going to be finishing in the light. This year on the Chena River Ridge, Andy Stearns, who's done it several times, has never finished in the dark. It's like right before the big descent, it was like, Eric, do you have an extra headlamp? I've never done this in the dark before. It's like, and I did. So.
Well, making sure you have plenty of battery power, and what I find is I have a headlamp that's 1,500 lumens that I use most of the time. I rarely have it that high, but I use that battery for the longevity because I never have to change batteries. I never have to, I mean, it lasts a really, really long time because it's got this battery pack that's been designed for its high output, but when you use it on its low output, it lasts and lasts and lasts. When people are flipping around with their batteries and changing, I don't deal with that. It just goes a long time.
Yeah, and you want to think about that
battery power and how that works and how that works in the cold. The bigger the battery pack, the less it's affected by the cold. So, you know, when I've got a couple of lupine systems, and one battery pack is twice as big as the other, but it seems like it lasts about, 5 or 10 times longer, and it just seems to be the mass makes a huge difference in its ability to stay warm and just keep that output going. So, really testing your batteries, how many batteries you're going to go through at the output you need, whatever that is. And it changes depending on your speed, and I too will turn mine way, way down when I'm, not going real fast, or I don't have a lot of brush hanging down, because yeah, you can see a whole lot better around you. But on the other hand, I've noticed from my experiences, when I'm really dragging and dogging and I just don't really feel like I've got much, I turn my light up a bit and I go faster. Something psychologically, I can see further, there's something that changes, but I just ride better. So, you know, sometimes I'm really dogging and my mind isn't sharp, my mind isn't allowing me to keep going at the pace I physically should be able to. Turning it up a bit does help me motivate for whatever reason.
Life's the shop
subconscious thing. Well, it's usually I'm riding at night when I don't want to be using the caffeine on training rides. That works maybe, but yeah, I mean, the lighting can play with your motivation sometimes when you're really dragging. So
a lot of people listen to music too.
Yeah.
Some form of music when they're probably.
Yeah.
You're out there.
That can help.
That's true.
A long way by yourself.
Haven't always.
Yeah, no, I think no matter where you are in the pack, you know, you do end up by yourself a lot, unless you're in that lead pack that stays together and chases to the finish line. They don't have much lonely time, but everybody else that gets spit off of that, they're all spit off at different times, and unless you intentionally ride with somebody, you know, whatever you're doing, you're by yourself.
Yeah, I've found myself traveling with bikers, but I'll pass them going up the hill.
Right.
They'll pass me going down the hill. They'll carry some speed. I'll catch up and pass them. So I travel with them, but like we were doing.
Yeah, pretty much
Just
straight up like we were
back and forth. Like we were traveling together, but we weren't traveling next to each other.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I would like, if I got into a cabin first, he's like, I don't know, 15 minutes away, and you would come in and you know, it was just like a safety check. You just kind of said, I know they're about X amount. So that way if they don't show up, well, that's a red flag, you know, right there. So.
I wasn't worried about you for the record.
Yeah, no. Well, we did a lot in the Susitna, because we were worried about each other over there.
Yeah, I mean, I've done most of the last half of the race usually without being able to see anybody, rarely seeing anybody. You know, if it was night, I might have been able to with the wife, but I mean, just as far as I can see on long straightaways, I can rarely see anybody. So you really are out there by yourself, you know, that really a small number of people out there spread out over a large number of hours.
I'd say one last thing too is, for me, is when you get to the top of Cache Mountain Divide, remember to stop and look around.
Oh yeah,
Beautiful.
it is beautiful.
You get into this race mode sometimes and you forget how incredible it is out there.
Unless it's white out.
Well, but I mean, last year there was Aurora Borealis.
The wolves in the Aurora was really cool.
So it's good to every once in a while remember to stop and appreciate the beauty.
Yeah, the trackers are pretty cool.
Oh yeah, you got to play, dude.
Can you play it from there?
Oh
No, it's just.
oh, too bad. Playing the movie, if you figured that out.
Yeah, I was.
Yeah.
I was losing out.
Once you learn how to do that, you do it over and over again. You watch different buttons running around.
You can see the evacuations going to town in the direction.
Who was it who went across Moose Creek Trail?
Yeah, I think I shared with you all before when I had finished. It was Ed and others were convinced that I was still at Borealis because my tracker was one of, I think one.
You had, there was two. I think this dude used it twice, each in here there's one or two.
And mine worked fine looking back at the track, with the exception of when I left Borealis, and then it just decided not to work. I don't know.
I remember, yeah, to finish, like all of a sudden, we had to finish our gap, we thought he was at Borealis, and all of a sudden he shows up, and we're like, oh, we're so sorry. You know, you're inside. Usually we try to be outside, cheer people.
Well, Ed was standing looking in the other direction from me, and he's like, Drew is still at Borealis, and I was like, right behind him.
Yeah, very cool.
Yeah, how's it going?
It's just, I could just
Thanks
for coming.
Yeah.
Yeah. Good luck.